And yeah, we have a very, very, very big topic today. We are talking about wholeness and balance, and I'm very glad to have here Patricia Hatherly from Australia, Neil Dougan from Australia, Dr. Mansoor Mirza from India, and hopefully coming in Dr. Shelly Sharma from India too. So maybe you can introduce yourself a bit and we try to get Dr. Mansoor online, who has a bit of audio difficulty at the moment. So Australians, please start.
Shall we do ladies first?
Absolutely.
So I'm Patricia Hatherly. I'm a classical homeopath. I've been in practice for 25 years as a classical homeopath, but I've worked with mothers and babies for about 45 years, specifically in the area of birth and breastfeeding. I'm not a midwife, I'm actually a teacher by profession, but got very interested when having my babies in a very isolated inland part of Australia. I got involved in those movements and it became quite a passion. I'm also a Reiki master, was brought up Catholic. The spiritual personal growth issues have been close to my heart all my life. I'm a mother of 3 children and have 6 grandchildren. I'm growing into wonderful little beings. And maybe I should say I've got 50 years of being married coming up next month, which is
Wow.
a big milestone.
Wow.
Oh, that's huge, huge. Well, look, wonderful to hear that introduction, Patricia. I'm Neil Dougan. I'm in Australia as well. I'm on the other coast from Patricia, and which for people who don't know Australia, it's about a 4-hour flight away. So, it's very much like being in a different country, really. I was originally trained as a clinical hypnotherapist, and I've worked with all manner of consciousness-based healing techniques ever since then. So I was actually taught hypnotherapy by my father, and it's interesting that Marianne is talking about, my connection to the Sufi world. Well, I gained this connection to the Sufi world through my father, who was a Sufi sheikh. He was trained and initiated with his teacher in Afghanistan in the 1970s. So this is an awful long time ago. It's around about the time that Patricia was getting married. And anyway,
I was.
So he ran a school in New Zealand where I'm from, and of the Sufi traditions and also the Gnostic traditions, and based on the teachings that he was gaining in Afghanistan from his teacher, but in addition to that, his teachings from an earlier teacher, George Ivanovich Gurjev, who was a European teacher. He was actually from Armenia. So that's sort of the origin of the Gnostic and Sufi part of what Marianne is hopeful that I'm going to be able to share a little bit with you all about. I am the father of 4 children, 4 boys and no grandchildren, and I live out in the bush. So that's me.
Yes, and thank you very much for being here today. The big, big topic is how to achieve wholeness and balance. And at the moment, we have a lot of trouble in the world. We have a lot of challenges. We have this COVID thing running and a lot of government, laws and tests and things that are made, which some people do not really agree to. So to be balanced in the mind, to be still and whole is not that easy. But of course, in times like this, we can achieve to do so. So I would like you to talk a bit of how you personally go for achieving wholeness and balance, and what you do to assist your clients in doing so.
Well, Patricia, maybe I could start and talk a little bit about what I do. From these traditions, so we can talk about it from these traditional perspectives, but the notion of balance really needs to be, you need to actually sort of define what are the things that are going to be in balance. And from these Gnostic traditions, we're looking at the body, and then we're looking at the minds, and I use the S on the end of the word mind, because there are multiple minds involved. And then there is obviously the spiritual component. So like there would be three major aspects of the individual that you would be looking to actually get into balance or to create harmony within. The minds are the tricky part. And, if we're looking at the model that Gnostics work with, they normally talk about a three-brain model, so that you have three brains in the body. You have an intellectual brain in your head, you have an emotional brain in your thorax or around your heart, and then you have a brain of the spine, which is connected to another further element of the brain, which is in the gut, and also another one in the abdomen. So the way I teach it, when I'm teaching and working with people, working with clients, I'm doing the healing work, we work with a five-brain, five-mind model, and we specifically work with all the various aspects of each of these minds. So if we think of the instinctive mind, so this is the mind of the gut, we'd be looking at the subconscious aspect of it, a subconscious, the conscious, an egoic aspect, and also a superconscious aspect of it. So when we start thinking about it in those terms, and I understand that what I'm just talking about is not necessarily completely congruent with what everybody else thinks, but nonetheless, this is the tradition. This is where this information, this approach has come from. So I'm not saying it as being, this is the truth and the only truth. I'm just saying this is the way that these people, have looked at things. And when you're looking for balance and harmony, you're talking about balance between five aspects of each of five minds. So there's at least 25 aspects that you need to actually get into some kind of balance to allow some type of harmonious experience to actually emerge from it. So that would be, the context. The first thing that I'd like to bring up is that, we need to understand from wherever we come from. So it could be, from a Western medical perspective, or it could be from an Ayurvedic, perspective, or, however it's actually sort of coming together. There are many, many ways to actually look at what actually makes up the individual. And so from there, you can begin to work out how you might try to go about becoming harmonious and balanced. So I'll hand it over to you, Patricia. I don't think we've still got our sound in India yet. But anyway, or Mariana, of course. Yeah.
So that seems to be a lot of balls to juggle in there. I mean, I'm a bit more for a more simple perspective, I think. And it does come back to the beginnings of life for me. I think that if conception has gone well and birth has gone well and nurture has gone well in those early years, there's more resilience and there's more connectedness to the higher self, which means then that the stages of life are engaged in a more balanced way. I don't know if you know of the work of Erik Erikson and his 8 epigenetic stages of man. So this is the model that I work with. So those first 2 stages where the infant learns to trust and become autonomous are to do with the years with the mother, and they are the first 4 years of life. So a baby who's at the breast and can wean, and I will say he has, to define mother and child, starts to crawl away from the mother, starts to walk away from the mother, can come back to the mother. She's the safe nest. So that's when that idea of, okay, I can do this by myself. I'm ready to go out into that next stage, which is the stage of creativity when children go into kindergarten and school. And then there is that, because the model is a stepwise progression, they're on that top rung. And so in adolescence, they can form meaningful relationships, which then extend into the adult life, finding a career that's a passion, feeling you can contribute to society, hopefully getting married and having kids and having a mortgage in the West. And then at the last stage of Erickson's model, there is despair or there is self-realization. And, you know, that's the goal, to become self-realized. And, you know, the despair model means that the cycle of life, you know, you'll come back and you'll reincarnate. You'll have to do it again. You haven't gotten life's lessons sorted. I do a lot of work in homeopathy with the 22 medicines that we have made from milk. And of course, the pinnacle of those is the one made from human milk, lacumanum. There's been a few provings done of lacumanum, and one of them in India done by our colleague, Dr. Rajan Sankaran. And when I've written a book about this, and I've compiled a repertory, and I was going through the proving diaries, and prover 13 had this amazing dream of walking up a flight of stairs to have 2 doors open to be received by 2 gods, which, you know, is kind of that whole story of, if I'm self-determined, I can make it into the realm of the gods. And I don't know whether you know of the Greek myth. We've talked about this before, but, you know, in order to become part of the pantheon of gods, you had to be suckled by Hera at her breast. And Zeus, when he tried to get Hercules onto the breast, she had to let down, and it became the galaxy of stars. You know, the Greek word for milk is gala. So to be nourished in that way is important for development. We know now it would probably be one of the most studied substances on the planet now. I mean, I've been 45 years. It's 30 odd years since I became a lactation consultant, and the amount of research into human milk is amazing. I have a poster in my clinic. It's nearly 3 meters long. It's on the wall. It's 2 columns. Did you ever wonder what's in formula? It's about 12 lines. And the other 2.5 meters is what's in human milk. And that's only what we know so far. So, you know, it finishes off the brain, the gut. And of course, you know, it gives you then that basis for the spiritual development, the growth of the person, the whole idea. You know, the goal of a self-realized human is to be alone but not lonely, comfortable in your own skin. And that does start with birth. You know, when the baby comes down, the first act is to open and fill the lungs with air, and then the circulation changes and you get pulmonary circulation, and the baby pinks up and starts to breathe while they're connected, and that breath of life is taken in. And if that's disturbed, and it is mightily these days because birth is so medicalized, there's so much interference with that process. And then, you know, women are really between a rock and a hard place. They find it difficult to do the mothering thing and do the career thing, and society doesn't value mothering as a real job. So they abandon the nurture. You might be shocked to know what some of the breastfeeding rates are in the world. I mean, in the United Kingdom, at 6 months, only 1% of women are still breastfeeding. And in Australia, it's 14%. It used to be double that. That's terrible when you think about it. When, you know, babies are born very premature as mammals. You know, our babies cannot walk around and become independent of the mother for a long time. You know, this is their nest. And we know from research that when there's that kind of nurture, there's oxytocin receptors primed, and that's what, you know, enables you to be an empath, enables you to connect with people, and of course connect with yourself, which is what we're talking about here, you know, how to become a self-realized person. So there's a lot I think we need to readdress in this whole area around reproduction to make the kind of things that you're talking about have a good foundation anyway.
It's an interesting thing, because normally when you think about getting aware or getting enlightened, you're older than 30 normally, when you start to think in this philosophical, ethical, spiritual ways. And by then, all the childhood is long gone. But it has been the foundation of whether you have it easy or not easy to come to this place.
Well, I think like Neil's family, you know, there was that tradition you know, of spiritual growth in the family. There was in mine. It was very kind of regimented, but, you know, I had an idea of what spirit was from a young age, and a connection. But of course, as you say, it's when you're older that you have the lightning strike. For me, it was going blind, literally. I had a detached retina after my second child and went blind in one eye. That was like a big wake-up call. You know, it's a bit like Odan, you know, I've lost sight in one eye and I got wisdom. So that was quite profound. So that's what got me really interested in natural medicine, having an incident like that happen. And I started with flower essences, so it's a shame we've lost our colleague who was going to talk about that. But, you know, they played a big part, you know, in the early days of my growth was using the flower essences.
Oh, we don't give up on Dr. Mirza yet. He will come back.
Yeah.
It's intriguing what you're talking about there with, you know, like therapeutic work that you've been doing with your clients and, you know, coaching and all that type of thing. And, you know, the way in which that type of work actually is a spiritual practice without it being labeled as being a spiritual practice. You know, I get that completely. And, you know, indeed, these tools of getting this kind of integration, it's really interesting to hear you talking about, you know, the integrated, you know, manner in which a child can actually reach, you know, adolescence or, you know, go on from there as well. Because in therapy, when I get to meet people, it's there's been a lifetime of trauma and there's been a lifetime of things not working. And so, you know, I'm getting to work with them where they've not had a childhood which has been satisfactorily supporting them, you know, whether it be, you know, for all sorts of reasons, you know, of which obviously breastfeeding and that type of thing is one of them. But at that point, you know, fundamentally, you know, to catch on to what Marianne was sort of heading towards there is that you practically, and from all intents and purposes, you're actually taking them back to a child and working with them from there on anyway. You know, you have to actually allow them to go through the developmental steps that you're talking about. So, you know, that's the other element. We're talking about getting balance and, you know, whatever the elements are that we're trying to be in balance with. Then there's the evolution process. So what is the maturation? I do a lot of you know, work which people might find a bit strange, but I work with animals. And so I do animal communication. And I've been doing a lot of work with a great white shark who swims off the coast out here. And, you know, what came to me this morning, I was doing some writing and I was doing some communicating with the shark as I was doing the writing on my computer. And the shark is completely 100% developed. You know, like obviously sharks don't lactate, they don't breastfeed and that type of thing, but they still are doing all the things that are necessary for them to be mature to their age. Whereas what you're talking about, Patricia, is that there's absolutely no opportunity, you know, for that sort of maturation process to occur. It just doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
Anyway,
and the other thing that's really interesting.
Hello?
Hello, everyone.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
I'm extremely sorry, but I think the universe wants me to enter a bit late today. But I think we will somehow make up for the time we have lost, and, you know, the karmic thing will be equalized. I hope so.
Definitely.
Anyway.
Definitely.
I'm sorry, I lost a lot of time, but maybe I'll view the recording and, you know, catch up on it.
Yes.
We've just been talking about beginnings of life and how important, you know, nurturing is. I was just about to say that one of the very interesting discoveries in human milk latterly is that there's it contains what's called microRNA, and microRNA contains the epigenetic thread going back at least 5 generations. So if you think of a baby as a computer and it needs its software uploaded, you know, the being breastfed gives all that ancestral epigenetics going way back, and is such an important part of the development because that's the story that's going to be carried forward. And if that's missed out on, well, we're not going to know what the consequences of that, because we're getting a lot of surrogacy now, and, lots of blended kind of DNA around reproduction. So we don't know what's going to happen with all of that. But at least to have been breastfed by the mother who gives birth to you enables you to connect to, what the go is for this lifetime and that you need to work with the important stuff.
What I can
so it seems
sorry.
So it just seems that there is a lot of ancestral information communicated or fed in through breast milk. So we are basically a lot of ancestral DNA also embedded in us. Like they say, our past lives or a past information from our ancestral lineage coming to us through milk, and it just sort of solidifies the whole process, of our existence, of our material existence. So we are not one person, but maybe a compendium of a lot of souls now materializing in one body. At least the mind, the history of that in one material body at one time. So it does seem like that, doesn't it?
That kind of connects a little bit with what you were saying, Neil, with the 5 minds of the Sufi perspective. Can you pick up a thread with regard to epigenetics and that?
Oh, absolutely. So, the information and what from my hypnotherapy background, we talk about the subconscious mind and so on. And you definitely have this layer underneath the subconscious, which is the sub of the subconscious mind. And all of that epigenetic type of information is deeply bedded in the sub of the subconscious mind. So in therapy, we have ways of actually being able to dig down and actually get access directly to that data in the sub of the subconscious mind. The past life issues are a particularly intriguing one that you're raising. I'm so glad that you're actually talking about that because those memories aren't strictly epigenetic, and yet they are still stored in the same area. So if we're doing regressions and we're finding information to do with and the Carl Jung talked about something he called 8 chakra, which has got nothing to do with chakras, but it's memories that you just pluck out of the universe from general consciousness, and they're all stored in the sub of the subconscious mind as well. And so it's really worthy, and to actually be doing work to actually extract the data. But what's intriguing to me, and what you're talking about there, Patricia, is that the epigenetic stuff, the past life stuff, and also the stuff from general consciousness, it's all stored, it's all being managed, in a mind, in an aspect of the mind. I find that completely fascinating, how that actually works.
Was that the noosphere that Teilhard de Chardin talked about when you're talking about the 8th chakra?
That's an aspect of it. Yeah, it's a complicated subject of which I'm not an expert, but yes, it is part of it. Yeah.
Right. And and then of course you've got morphogenesis, which Rupert Sheldrake's done a lot of work on, where, we are all connected very subtly. You look at what's going on now globally, and, we're talking about polarity shifts, and we're talking about the big fight between good and evil and all that sort of thing, light and dark. And I think we're all affecting each other with our attitude and disposition in a big way, even though they're making us socially distant. I think it goes much beyond that. But I was always very intrigued by that, 100th monkey story, which I guess you all know, but there may be some listeners who don't, but I think it was in the 50s there was some research being done on a group of islands with monkeys, and the researchers would take on some sweet potatoes as a thank you to the monkeys. And one day one monkey went down and washed her sweet potato, and by the end of the week all of her friends on the island were doing the same, and within a month all of the monkeys on all of the islands were doing it. So that's that whole idea of once one person starts to do something, it does catch on. And that's something I've noticed in birth, because I've been working in the area of birth a long time, and back in the 70s and 80s, women were very empowered to birth, and they went back to the Earth Mother thing, and it was all done, when you go among the work of Lamaze and Michelle O'Donnell and Ina May Gaskin. But women have completely stepped away from that now, and I've got 6 grandchildren, 5 of them have been born by cesarean section.
Wow.
You know, that's the way of the world now. It's women have just kind of lost the thread with that in a lot of ways, which is very sad. But that's got a lot to do with the way Western medicine has managed it, you know. The childbirth movement used to be a big movement, and then all of a sudden hospitals started stepping into that space and the Caesar rate went right up.
Yeah. What I can add in as a vet is that animals who grow up without a mother because they lost it due to accident or were dropped by the mother, they are totally different. Absolutely different.
Mm.
If they happen to have a good human to care for them, they are very, very trustful to humans, whether they come from a wildcat or not. And if they don't get a nice human, they are prone to die. Sooner or later, they won't get 1 or 2 years old.
It's interesting because in homeopathy, the remedy lac caninum, with the work that I've done on that over the years, I think the main etiology is absent mother, especially for people who have been adopted out where the mother has left it. I mean, the dog is amazing the way she will take on any animal and nurse it. You know, she will feed kittens, she will feed any kind of little animal. That's what a dog will do. So it's almost like it's the opposite of that for us when we're in that lac caninum state. It's a very dark night of the soul, not feeling connected to the self, and it's because there hasn't been mothering. People I've worked with, it's interesting, Alan says you only give lac caninum once, and I find with all the animal lacs, you can only give them for a short time because they must come back into the community of man. They must come back to lac humanum or lac maternum, or you haven't got them on the path to self-realization. Because the big issue is I did not get the milk of my mother.
I raised kittens aged 1 week only without mother, or the absolute most little one was 3 days old, still had the navel cord on, but dried. And it's a very interesting thing to see them grow and develop their character if they don't have a mother. And they need so much attention. Yeah. Incredible. So much warmth, so much attention. And you can see when you draw the attention away, they just break inside.
Is it because they're so insecure? You know, not having been in that nest here, you know, is like, oh, you know, the boundaries are just so disparate. It's so important that happens. Skin to skin is really important.
They will die if you don't carry them all the time. You need to carry them with you all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not easy to get balanced in a world like that. So let's find methods to help ourselves and our clients to get
Turn the television off. Turn the television off.
Turn the television off. Turn the television off is one thing. I'm living without a TV actually for 30 years now.
Very good.
The only thing I have is my laptop, and I appreciate it very much. It gave a lot of possibility to find stillness and to find something which I would call wholeness. I was very unbalanced till I was 50, I think.
You like to watch the sunsets and take beautiful photos of them and share them.
Yes.
Which is lovely. I mean, life can be a walking meditation. I mean, everything that you should do every day, is part of your spiritual process. It doesn't have to be that you sit and you meditate or contemplate. you know, it is really an affirmation and intention to serve, but also in doing so, you're serving yourself and your highest needs through service of others. I mean, you can't share your cup unless your cup is full. So, like they say in the aircraft, you know, fit your own mask before helping others. I think that's one of the biggest things that I find I have to do in practice, is getting people to realize that to focus on the self is not being selfish. You know, there's a difference between self-centeredness or self-focus and selfishness. And when I feel people are about to kind of really blossom, and I'm going to give them lacumanum, I ask them, how do you sign your name? And invariably they will give the letter, like for my name, P, full stop, Hatherly. No. Has to be Patricia, Hatherly. And I make them all change their surname in the way they write it. And I say, well, if you don't put yourself first, front and center with the name that you are given, it is your vibration, you can't possibly connect to your higher self. It's a simple act, but it makes acknowledgement that you as a person are the most important thing. Everybody's thinking, how do I sign my name?
No.
Yes.
So
Go on, please.
Yeah. So this graphology has a real impact on your subconscious, because it's like your thought, your word, and flowing out through a neuro-linguistic manner in the physical aspect of handwriting. So, you know, as we are using computers more and more and we're writing less and less, it does have a significant impact on our subconscious. So we remember less and less. You know, you realize that you know, we have so many mobile, but we can't remember a 7-digit number. But if we used to have these telephone books, and we should remember all the contacts and their names, the right numbers, you know, without not even 2 or 3 mistakes. So writing is very important part of, you know, cultivating your subconscious and also expressing your subconscious through your handwriting. So graphology does help. But more than that is, I think, the basic intention that would you want yourself clouded by the world around you and just, you know, be in a shell? Or do you want to express yourself and, you know, attain your highest potential? That's what you're meant to do as a lesson, or your birth on earth is how you live your life and learn your lessons. So how do you live them and how do you learn them? So the process is express yourself, because communication is the only means of interacting with the world around you and maybe also the world within you. So if you cannot communicate or do not communicate appropriately, that's why most of the conflicts are in the world or between relationships. So if the communication is faulty, everything will be of no use. Even if you're highly educated and you know the subject thoroughly well, but if you can't communicate effectively, it all breaks down. So even prisoners, you know, who are isolated, if you want them to improve, you know, what they do is start communicating with them. Get some other prisoners in, just talk or even say a few words, and then sort of talk gibberish, but communicate, slowly communicate. And I'm sure Marianne, you know, works with animals, and I'm sure you see that when you communicate with animals, they understand you so well. You have to just go on with the flow. And at one time, I've been doing this, and I'm amazed. You know, I'm not such a great animal, you know, person, but I love animals and I can communicate with them because I realize they understand my language better than human beings. I'm just so clear in my intention, and I just talk to them, but I don't know. It's like King Solomon who talked to the ants, you know, and the elephants rather, and says, you know, the ants are coming, so don't go this way, go another way. So you can communicate, you know. I mean, he was, so I just feel that's one important thing. So probably even this webinar, which we are doing, if we communicate the intention in very simple words or easily, I hope the others can understand and make sense of it. It probably help them in their lives.
And body language is also important too, I think. You know, we place a lot of emphasis in homeopathy on the gesture. And I always find that, you know, in consultation, it's a lot of the things that are not said that are important, you know, from deciding where to go. you know, the colour of the face or a look certain times. The
So only
timbre of the
7%
voice.
is verbal. Sorry, 7%
Yeah.
is verbal communication, and 93% is non-verbal communication, which is, I don't know where we get it from or where we miss, but we miss a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
What's interesting, sorry, right at the very beginning of the conversation, while you were trying to sort out all your internet problems there and so on, we were talking about, you know, the communication issues and the amount of data and so on and so forth. And one of the things I found in my research is that we're capable of actually decoding, to an extent, information on like an absolute other planes, you know, like you can, the cell phone messages, for example, all the conversations that are going on in the community near me, all that information which is coming across the microwaves, our beings have a way of actually interpreting that. Now, they can't interpret it into what is the conversation that the person's holding, but they know the data, they know the basic information that's going on there. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, this year with the global fear and anger and all of this type of thing, you can be sat in the bush. I live in the bush, and I'm still have the tuning. I'm able to tune into the sort of general consciousness around the anger and the separation and all the need to control and the violent and tendencies and so on and so forth. So we're actually able to interpret, you know, many more things than people would, you know, recognize as being at all natural. And you know, I've often wondered, you know, I'm not a homeopath, but I've often wondered whether there would be a potential to actually do a proving around the transmissions from a cell phone. So I don't mean the microwave radiation. I'm not meaning that. I'm meaning the data that is coming from a conversation that's coming across the microwave radiation. So two different things. Like I know, I understand that it would be natural as a homeopath to do, you know, approving and to create remedies
They're
around.
called imponderables, actually. They're called imponderables. We have them with sunlight and various radiation. There have been provings done in that area.
Yeah. So the radiation, I can see how that would be a natural thing to go for. What I'm talking about is the information that is transmitted via that radiation. That's what I'm interested in. And I think there could be some really interesting things come out of that. But anyway, all I'm really saying is that our bodies are able to interpret information on widely more, you know, different scales of information types than we could ever imagine. And so, you know, if you're talking about 7% as communication, well, what about all these other things, you know? Are we bringing that percentage even further down? I don't know.
I guess probably I want to add in our conversation an example. I've been quite traumatized as a child, and about age 3 or 4, I realized that adults have words with whom they communicate, and they think things, and they have a body language, and they have energies they transmit, and they have emotions they transmit, and usually everything is contradictory. So I could not rely on what my mother was transmitting as an energy or as an emotion, because her words are contradictory. And it took quite a time for myself to realize that human beings have a consent on that they tend to believe what they tell by words, even if everything else is totally contradictory to it. So now when I hear from you that 7% is communicated language or word communication, and the other 93% is a different communication, I know why I'm so confused, or I was so confused as a child. Because
so words can trap, Words can trap and words can liberate. So mostly words trap us. So if we hear from a homeopathic teacher, you know, this is how a snake is, or this is how the remedy is, we maybe stick to those words and we prescribe that remedy, but we don't realize there is a vast range in that. the word, we don't have to stick to the word, but the essence of the substance. And when you go to the essence, you can liberate. So you know, you don't have to be narrowly focused. You know, any word can just trap you. Are you free or are you bound? So you have to understand that words are very tricky. So my teacher, you know, and I know you know Dr. Priya. So we have the same, share the same teacher and mentor, Dr. Mahesh Gandhi. So what he tells us, don't go by the words, listen to the story and zoom out and zoom in. But don't just stick to the words like I'm stuck and go to a cruciferous group of remedies or, you know, is the whole sensation. You know, sensation is given in about 5 to 10 words. But if you stick to those words, you'll be lost. You'll be lost and you will go to another track and the patient is saying something else and you're thinking, what is stuck in cruciferous in the old age? Do we go to caporalis or we go to salicalis? But if we forget the words and just say, zoom out. Okay, talk. Just gibberish. Let us get the feel of the remedy. Let's get the feel of where you are really stuck. Everybody is stuck at some place, I'm sure. So like my internet, my sound is stuck.
Asking them about their dreams is often a better way to get the thread going, because that's the higher self talking, and you're going to get more to go on by the words that come out to describe what's going on in that dreamscape than it is in everyday reality, because that's people attached to their delusion.
That's true. Again, the mind is, you know, the mind can fool you, but your body will never lie. No, the mind will always deceive you. And, you know, you will think, okay, now I have to impress the homeopath. So I tell the homeopath, you know, I'm so-and-so, I studied so-and-so, and I can deal with my family, I can deal with my work, and there's nothing wrong with me. I don't know, my wife has just got me here. What do I say? What do I do? I'm perfect.
Then we ask them what their patients. Then we ask them what their poo looks like, and they go, whoop. That tells us everything we need to know.
That's true. So, you know, is there something, it's, that's what we, so subconscious is reality. So your subconscious is reality, but the emotions you attach to your subconscious realities give us clues to your being. You know, the event is one, but the emotions connected to that reality gives us clues to your existence or your core. So that's what she's saying. But Patricia was saying the dreams are something which are taken as facts for us because they are directly from the subconscious. And when you take a patient a bit deeper in, with Neil would agree that, you know, when you take him from the conscious to the subconscious and the patient starts talking unrelated to what he has come for, but he just starts talking whatever he needs to say without any uninterruption and, you know, with complete focus. His eyes are completely, you know, fixed or in a dazed state. And he just talks and talks. And that's where you just feel he's coming close to what he or she really is. And then that's when you need to focus. But very often when they're doing that, we ask them a question. Tell me your craving. And then the subconscious is cut off. They go back to conscious. If you ask them any question like, what do you love to do? Again, no. So you just have to be. So we have to be patient. Like people like me especially have to be really patient and wait. Let them get over with everything. And then maybe just be. I don't think you need to ask a craving if you got the entire essence, do you?
No. But sometimes it's just a throwaway comment that they'll make right at the end or sometimes right at the beginning when they're off their guard. Yeah, that'll give you the clue. Like anybody who comes into my clinic and attacks me because there wasn't parking or whatever, I'm thinking, oh, that's just
Because the first 10 minutes of a case really give you clues to the entire case. But we're so busy understanding that how do we attack this patient or how do we get inroads into this patient, we lose those vital 10 minutes. And we take that 1.5 hours to understand what those vital 10 minutes were for. Often. We just have to be really in a meditative state.
Look, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions. And One of them is, from this context that I work from, where we have multiple minds associated with these multiple brains. So if we think about the instinctive mind, which is associated with the gut brain, or the relationship mind, which is associated with the pelvis, then these minds don't very commonly actually throw up words, or like they can, but it's not really their thing. So the way in which the instinctive mind actually is communicating, it's not physical either. So it's not actually in the physical body necessarily. It's a mind thing, but it's a mind thing without words. And I'm just really interested in when you're doing your observational work, when you're taking a case, for example, how you're going about doing that interpretation. Because I know what I do. I'm not trying to trap you or anything like that, so I'll explain what I do. What I do is I meditate, and I always take myself into an alpha state, so a meditative state, and that's for the head. And I do similarly for these other minds. I take myself into a meditative state for these other minds as well, or the brains, the actual physical brains. And in that way, what I'm looking to do is to actually get the communication directly, say, for example, from the instinctive mind, the gut mind of the client, to the gut mind of myself, so that I can understand it there. I can actually understand it in my gut. And it's not an understanding of words, but from there would be an opportunity for the therapy to go on. So what I'm interested in is, as highly skilled people as you are, how you're going about achieving this type of thing, like where you're going with that type of approach.
I mean, I'm a Reiki master, and I've got my clinic set up so that, when it was built, I put Reiki symbols in the cement and they're on the walls, and, the energy in the space is, quite special. And I do find that halfway through the consultation that the patient's higher self will tell my higher self pretty much what I need to know. And so that is working on a different level that's not even engaged on that patient therapist level. It's a higher consciousness. I can't even really describe how that happens, but it does. Or I'll pick up my book and it will just open to the page that I need. That happens to me all the time. I just have to think of a rubric and I'll pick up the book and boom, there it is. I go, okay, I'm right. I know I'm right. So there's something else working in the field for that to be happening, that's for sure.
So, of course, there are these different types of brains, as Neil has said. One is the fish brain, then there's a reptilian brain, that's how the patients react. Then there's the mammalian brain, okay? That's more about nurturing, about emotions. And then you go to the higher brain and the higher consciousness. So, you will see patients behaving in these mannerisms sometimes. So the fish brain is sudden attack. They're frozen. They don't know what to do in a situation. And in a reptilian brain is, when they have a situation, they will either attack or they'll just go away. That the adrenaline type of real response that you have through stress. Then the mammalian brain is more about emotions, about getting confounded with emotions, etc. And the higher brain is connecting to intuition and the part of us which is our higher self. But often the patients are in a particular state of mind, and you are in a particular state of mind. So generally we are not in the linear state of mind. So as you say, there are three phases. One is the the child within us, the parent within us, or the guide within us. So sometimes the patient is like a child, okay, wanting something, wants to show something, wants to explore something, but we are a parent, so we're telling him, tell us more, tell us more. But the patient is just childish and just childlike. I mean, not a child, but childish in behavior and wants to explore. So we are always like a parent. But if you come the child way and just tell the patient, wow, that's so beautiful. What did you see in that place? We'll describe it more. You just go inwards, within. And suppose he's talking from the parent sort of attitude. And then you either be a child or you try to be a parent and say, yeah, I know, so difficult with children nowadays. So what do you do with them? You have to be strict and you take care of your money. So then they realize that you're communicating with them there. Or they go to a wiser person. And then they'll just talk about spiritual truths. And then you just talk about, yes, yeah, everything is fine. There's nothing a problem. And then they go inward. So I think at some place, at some times, you have to be on that level or the plane where the patient is so you can connect with you. Again, it's about communication. You feel the vibe. And if you feel the vibe, you can't be a parent and say, no, why did you go and play in water? So then the child in you is, oh my God, I'm going to be punished now. I've already been punished all my life. And now there's a doctor who's going to punish me before he treats me. So what do I do? Then I say, no, I didn't play in water. I didn't play in water. Just like I was telling you about my friend. So very often this whole connection is lost, and then instead of expressing myself, I try to impress the doctor. I might be an 80-year-old man, but I impress the doctor. I've gone to 100 doctors before you and nobody's been able to do anything, and I'm sure you can't do anything, but I've just come to you, so at least you also try your best. They'll never express. So then you are like, okay, fine, let's try. So I often feel that, but as Patricia said, when you develop a sort of rapport with a patient on a subconscious and a intuitive field, there's a field around you, and that field makes possibilities and probabilities happen within that domain, which is, focused on healing, on understanding, and completely like the Atlantean civilization that just heals. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes they don't even give a remedy. They just have become aware and they know their state. And then they just feel like, oh, I don't know what happened. I just went to this clinic. This doctor didn't say anything. I didn't say anything, but I don't know. I feel so light and I just feel I'll be all right. It's like
being shriven. It's like being shriven. You know what that term is? It's,
not really.
It's to go to confession, to tell your sins. And I mean, to take this case is such a revelation sometimes to people, and they just see things in perspective in the timeline of their life. And at the end of it, they go, oh, I didn't realize that was connected and that was connected. And yes, they are lighter without you even having given a remedy, just them telling their story, because we ask them things that no one else has ever asked them, and they tell us things that they've never, ever, ever told anybody else. That is the nature of the space that we,
so we create a space which is unprejudiced, and just simply witnessing. You don't have to poke your finger or your mind at something and say,
I'm listening to
more.
You.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm there for you. And it's only going to be here, and say whatever or do whatever you want to. Go out, you can come back after a while. You can have some coffee with me. It's like, don't have the table space. No table between you and the patient, which you normally do. I do have a table. But then it's like we are all at the same level. We are two souls talking to each other. And if we can do that, a lot of ego from both sides just drops. Yeah. And when it drops, there is nothing. It's just pure souls meeting each other and being one energy. And the healing just takes place.
Yeah. And that's why you can sometimes get placebo and some really deep healing will happen because, they've just told the story. Just recently, I asked a patient to, I've only done this a few times, to go back because she's got a very wounded child and it's transgenerational. I mean, in her background, there were some terrible things happened in the female line. And I said, just write a fairy story about this situation, and it'll be interesting to see what comes up. But if she can, because she is an author, I said, if you can get into that creative space and just come up with something creative, she will provide her own answer. I'm quite sure of that.
That's true. So the big piece that I'm hearing from you all is that it's about being present and witnessing. And what I was talking about there before, that business of how one would communicate, say, for example, from that instinctive mind with another person, it's very much the case of just witnessing. And you just have to be open and ready, and then you can witness with all of these different aspects that you're talking about. Particularly interesting, these homeopathic approaches that you're mentioning. Very, very interesting.
And also too, Neil, when we talk about some of those minds you mentioned, in the gut and, the pelvic area, we do look at sensation and pain or things that people will associate with those areas, or discharges. especially from the pelvis. There's the female discharges and, you know, normal biological functions. They tell us a lot because they're so unique and individual and varied. And they are very connected to the brain areas that you're talking about, I'm quite sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, even the food cravings, you know, food cravings are linked to that too. You know, I've got to have salt, I've got to have fat, I've got to have whatever is linked to something that's going on in one of those brains that you're talking about.
I'd just like to actually ask you, you all a couple of other questions around that. And one of them was when we're working with these multiple mind models, like it is just a model, I'm not saying it's the truth. It's a way of trying to observe nature, really. And if we're thinking in terms of the mind of the pelvis, it's about relationships, but it's about relationships of all sorts. And the egoic aspect, so if we're looking at these multiple levels of the mind, of each of these minds, so if we're talking about a relationship mind, then the egoic aspect is about separation. It's about dividing, it's about splitting up, and to manage overwhelm. So it's an overwhelm response. Each of these egoic aspects are overwhelm response. So that one is about separation. The one in the gut, in the instinctive mind, it's all about knowing the right answer and shutting out alternative possibilities. So it's about narrowing everything down to the point where there's no creative option. And so I actually call that the denier, because it's denying possibility, it's denying creativity, it's denying communication, really. The mind of the spine, which is different to what you're talking about, the reptilian brain, by the way. I understand, that Western scientific approach. So this mind of the spine is about movement, and it's about implementation. And the egoic aspect of that is about control. So what have we got? We've got separation, we've got control, and we've got denial of options. Then if we come up into the thorax, so, the neurology of the thoracic area, which is massive, that's an emotional mind. And the egoic aspect of that is about distraction. So it's about avoiding, whatever it is that you need to be paying attention to. And lastly, if you get up into the intellectual aspect, so that intellectual mind, the egoic aspect of it would be what I call a deluder. So it's all about deluding ourselves. And all of those 5 egoic elements are all about trying to manage overwhelm. So it's trying to cope with, the stresses of life and being able to go through it. So, Patricia, and what you're talking about with your client who's had all this trauma, sort of abuse and that type of thing, I can sort of feel it from what you're talking about, the actual nature of the experience that she's had, then it's deeply overwhelming. And all of these egoic elements will be coming into play to actually protect her from the experience of all that trauma. And so, as a therapist, if I'm hearing what you're talking about with the story writing and that sort of thing, is you're giving her an opportunity of, coming back into contact with it in a way in which it's not going to kill her, so that it's not actually, a destructive process. So that's a lot of blah, blah from me, but I'm just very interested to hear from you because, this homeopathic approach that you're taking appears to actually go into all of these different areas, but from a different language, like it's coming in, from a different way of actually viewing these things. So I'm just really interested to hear what you've got to say.
It's like, dots are connected in different ways. Even in homeopathy, we try to connect the dots from all the different aspects. And like what you said, I think the chakra system also is a very, very interesting system which connects homeopathically. For example, the basal chakra or the root chakra is all about insecurities. So when the patient comes with a lot of fears, insecurities, you'll often find problems related to constipation, to rectal problems, to lower back problems, and the area around that. Because oftentimes, then if you go up to the pelvic region, as you said, it's all about the sensuality. Not only about relationship, but understanding nature and achieving pleasure or pain from nature. Basically understanding and getting sensual towards nature. So is that blocked in your space or is it open? Can you feel overwhelmed with all that sensuality, or are you just blocked to whatever sensuality is there? So you see a lot of pelvic problems in that area, especially related to sexuality, to to connecting with people around you, or to connecting to yourself also. Then as you go higher up, the navel chakra is all about control issues. So when you have control issues, you realize either are you controlling someone, or is somebody else controlling you. So you realize, a lot of these cases with acidity and stomach cramps and the irritable bowel syndrome, they're all about this control, this carcinogenic element. It's about excessive control or no control, or you being controlled. So it's so well related, all these chakras. If you really go towards it, the heart chakra, as you said, the intelligence, but this is emotional intelligence. So everything about your heart, either you receive love or you give love. And if you can give but you don't receive, or you receive but you can't give, or there's imbalance between the two. And then the throat chakra, as you all know, it's communicating and expressing. You can express an idea or you can't express one, or somewhere midway. And then of course the Agnya chakra between the eyes is, can you plan in advance, or can you foresee what you're doing and your plan in life? And of course the connection. So I do think a lot of remedies are related. So everything in any field is related to all other fields. It's up to us to connect the dots and make the connection. So as we go higher up and we study, so we can just say, like, even from mammals, we learn such a lot from all our remedies, and we go to the life of mammals. We study the whole animal. I think Patricia has done a lot of work on lacs, so she understands, the whole animal and the whole nurturing and the issues with mammals. But when you study that in great detail, you almost study the entire animal kingdom.
It's interesting to the way that to us with humans, that you're talking about the heart chakra. We lift our babies to the heart chakra to feed them. We're the only ones who do, or primates do, which is unique in the mammal kingdom. Some of the mammals have their teats down in the pelvic area, and dogs have them in ventral line, so do cats. But we lift them to the heart chakra, so that, that whole oxytocin thing, which comes with the milk, is felt on a lot of different levels.
That's something interesting. When you raise those animal babies without mother, what they really want to have all the time is hear the heartbeat of the human. And
I guess that takes them back to the womb. Do you think?
Even when they're adult, they tend to go to the chest and hear the heartbeat.
Yeah, so you're creating a comfort zone akin to the womb, the warmth, the protection, and closeness to the, the maternal body, that condition which is there in the womb. And that is the most blissful state to be in. And even if you meditate and if you come to that meditative state, it's the most blissful because you're taken care of. You don't have to surrender to anything. You just are. You don't have to do anything. You are just there. And that's when, the remedy borax is just the beginning. Beryllium is that beautiful state of oneness, sameness. I don't want anything more. Don't give me anything less. Don't give me anything more. I'm okay as I am. And when the contractions start and the baby has to come through, it has to literally fall, go downwards. And then borax, there's a remedy, boron as a remedy is that I don't want to go, I want to remain here. I want to go down. No, down. You have to go down. You have to go. Push. No. Push.
There's a fear of falling.
All about, fear of falling. And I can't make that decision to remain in or out. And the patient will say, I don't know. It's either this or that, indecisive. Indecisive because of, I'm leaving my comfort zone. How could I go out? They have agoraphobia and they have all these fears. So it's so interesting to observe the whole process of birthing is one whole, series on the periodic table and much more. I think Patricia and Marianne could attest to that. It's so interesting.
We were talking a little bit about this before you came on, and so when we were talking about birth, because when the baby comes out, it takes that first breath and fills the lungs. It's about oxygen, and of course the borax condition is about lack of oxygen. And I don't know whether you know this, but Franz Vermeulen talks about it, is that boron is the trigger in the airbags in cars.
in the trigger in the
airbags in a vehicle. So if you have a car accident and the airbag activates, it's boron which will activate it, which is really interesting because that whole process happens at birth, and that's why that is, you know, that incarnation, you know, remedy. It's actually, just as a little therapeutic tip, I don't know whether in your country babies have to go in car seats back to front in the first 6 months, but if a baby is in a car seat with its head facing the back and screaming, it's a real indicator that they do need borax, because they're just feeling that they're falling the whole time they're in the car. It's just another little clue that I've picked up over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting, because these small clues can just give you the remedy. You don't have to talk to the patient. The mother just comes and says, my baby is just creating havoc. As soon as I sit in the car, it's bad. I have to stop or I'm going to die.
Ask them what the birth was like and what was the APGAR score, and, you know, you're done.
Really good. These clues really come out, you know, they're really beautiful. So when people tell us, you know, what they've researched, and it just comes to just one sentence. This is it. And that's what the essence is. It's just a very little bit, but we need a whole story to understand this bit.
Yeah.
I just was thinking of a beryllium crystal I once had in my hand. And it really had this energy of wholeness, of just being. I just wondered, did Peter Tuminello do beryllium as a remedy? Do you know?
No, I don't. I have to look the book up.
No, I don't.
What color is beryllium?
It's one kind of yellow-green. Very nice.
Okay. Heart chakra.
Probably.
Yeah. But of course, it's all about becoming a diamond, isn't it? I mean, we talk about gems. You know, I often say to my patients, you know, who are complaining about their hard life, you know, say an amorphous piece of carbon becomes a diamond only when it's tempered to extreme, you know, and this is what it's all about. You know, you are becoming a diamond. And if you can take, you know, what life brings at you and kind of get it in perspective and see that it's opening doors for you to explore growth, it's a blessing, really, in perspective.
In the Heart Math Trainer community, we say a diamond is a piece of coal who learned to handle stress. Very good.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a question here. In which aspect carcinosinum resembles to luck remedies?
Sorry, what was that again?
It's a question from Italy. In which aspect does carcinosinum resemble the leg remedies, or to the leg remedies?
Okay.
Well, it's about perfection, isn't it? About achieving perfection and issues with control. I mean, carcinosinum, I use the bowel nosodes a lot. So the bowel nosode that corresponds to that is Morgan Pure, which has all of the nosodes in it, you know, syphilinum, tuberculinum, serinum. And of course, it's the preeminent nosode you use for babies. The beginning of life is Morgan Pure. So I will often use that instead of carcinosinum for an adult, because I often find that when you give that straight up, unless they have cancer, they will produce a cancer as part of their cure. And you've got to then learn to deal with that. But I mean, lacumanum sits on the gold series, in the middle of the gold series, so it equates to aurum and platina, you know, which is they see themselves as the perfect minerals. So that's, you know, it's very much cancer miasm. Lacumanum and lacmaternum are very much cancer miasm remedies. It's interesting too, I can make another comment about that, is that there has been research done in human milk where there's a complex called Hamlet, human alpha lactalbumin, which is the main protein in human milk, made lethal to tumour cells, Hamlet. And it's an oleic acid alpha-lactalbumin complex, and it will destroy cancer cells without just touching the other cells around it. So, you know, it is a big remedy for treating cancer. So, you know, given it in low potency, maybe there's a future. We've not done any work in that area, but, you know, it is a sarcode. But certainly that you know, that research has been done in Western medicine. That's why, you know, women who breastfeed for a long time tend not to get breast cancer. It's because, you know, there's milk has been going through and going through. And when I get women who have got pathologies of the breast and they're lactating, you know, if it's a Asterias rubens or one of those remedies, and I'm thinking, oh, you know, there's cancer nipping here. If that doesn't come right pretty quickly, you know, I would be sending them off. But generally it does come right, and then you can save the lactation, and then you know then that breast has been saved, because, you know, if we can just get it right, get that breast milk flowing in that breast, the milk will heal it.
Interesting. Interesting to think. You know, milk and cows is a thing that any vet is a bit disgusted about, the way cows are treated. But maybe they can endure so much because of that. All the milk flowing all the time.
Yeah, that's right. They have to have a letdown twice a day. Whereas women who are lactating, this is an interesting thing, 76% of the world's cultures practice polygamy. Yeah. So when a woman is lactating 6, 7, 8 times a day, she gets a letdown, which is a surge of oxytocin. So she's absolutely got no interest in having any sexual relationship. And it's very difficult in a monogamous situation for, you know, that to be managed, because there is a partner who has needs, whereas the woman and the baby are just doing their thing. And so in polygamous, you know, situations, those women and babies are put aside while that lactation is going on. And those women don't, especially if they're living in traditional cultures where there's not a lot of nutrition, they won't have a period again until they've weaned, which is, you know, 5 or 6 years. And so they won't have another baby for about 6 years. And that keeps the population of the planet down. You know, it's the most, you know, sustainable act on the planet is to breastfeed. You know, 500 calories a day, and, you know, you produce litres of milk, which, you know, are worth on the open market just about as much as gold.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So it's part of a woman's sexuality to breastfeed.
Definitely. When I look at animals, at dogs and cats breastfeeding, you can see it.
Yeah, that's why they go into a sepia space, indifference to those loved best. It's like, oh, leave me alone. I'm doing my thing with my baby.
It's like a bubble around them, which you feel do not enter.
And it needs to be protected. I mean, as a community, we need to recognize the space, that it's a very sacred space, and that to mother is a real job. You know, I'd like to see governments and, you know, workplaces recognize these sorts of things and find ways that, you know, women can still have careers, but, you know, maybe work from home more, or be paid, you know, bonuses to enable them to breastfeed. It's a big social dilemma.
And also making the men aware that, you know, the woman in the house needs the space to breastfeed and nurture. So, you know, they have to be patient, tolerant, and adjust to the situation. They just can't say that, you know, just get back to work as normal. The baby's out and you're okay. Get back. No. Be that period. And you have to be adjusting, you know, make those changes within you as a partner or a living member in the household. And just see to it like every phase, it's given its natural flow. Otherwise, there'll be problems for you, for your partner, and the whole household. You know, when you need this.
Well, as we were saying before you came on, you know, this whole stuff about what happens in the first 4 years of life. You know, we were talking about Erik Erikson's model in the first 2 stages of autonomy and trust. You know, this is all about the mother and the need for that to happen so that there is resilience. I mean, as homeopaths, we'd say that that's when Sora is set. You know, are you a Sora in this strong, independent, you know, space, or is it the underfunction, you know, lack space? And if it doesn't go well in those first 4 years, you know what the answer is? Sora is weak, and that's not good. It then becomes the engenderer of all disease, you know, which is what Hahnemann said it was. But, you know, you want to do aphorism number 9 and be the most perfect person you can be, it all just depends what happens at the very beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, at every level of our growth and development, there have been forces which, you know, traumatize us. They just break up our wholeness into a million pieces. And the whole process of healing is just getting those pieces and trying to get the whole once back again, and, you know, trying to keep it in the whole way for as long as possible. But at every time there is some event that traumatizes you, your soul, your mind, your emotions just break. And then that trauma, as you know, in BACH flower remedies, you use a remedy called as Star of Bethlehem, if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
It's like the trauma, you know, the trauma of an accident, of a shock, of any emotional, physical, anything which just traumatizes you out of the blue. Or you've been traumatized for a long, very long period of time, but the trauma is still fresh. So first you get to, as homeopaths say, the ailments from, or the cause of the disease or the situation is very important. You have to go to that trauma, the time of the trauma, and try to heal it from there. And then all the other things which arise because of the trauma, the offshoots, and then try to, I like the Japanese way of doing things. You know, they use the Kitsuki method. So I just got this bowl here to illustrate that. So whenever there are cracks in any china or porcelain or anything in particular, they fill up the cracks with gold, you know, with actual gold. So now this bowl is worth more than what it was worth earlier before it was cracked. So when a cracked person or a cracked being, you know, the whole soul cracks up, and you then heal it, the potential of that being is raised to multifold, because then the healing energies and that acceptance leads you just to a quantum jump in your being. So it's just so fascinating what different cultures do. And, you know, for example, if this was in India, once upon a time, I would have just thrown it in the dustbin. It's cracked and it's no longer useful, but it's supposed to be a bad omen if there's chipped crockery in your house. But the Japanese are healing it, and that's so akin to what most of us do as healers. We just try to get the dissociated fragments close to each other and just make them whole once again.
It's an interesting image because as I see a lot of babies, I do discuss the whole vaccine issue with mothers, and it's a very difficult decision about whether I do or whether I don't, and there are consequences either way. But, you know, I say to parents, it's a bit like you're given this very precious piece of china, and, you know, if it breaks, yes, we can put it back together, but it's not as perfect as it was. And that's what will happen once you start to vaccinate, and, you know, there makes some, we can kind of fix it. I don't know that it's fixed with gold, the image you've just shown there. Maybe mercury. It's you know,
yeah.
But it is something they can relate to, and, you know, just give them lots of research to make sure they know that they're comfortable with their decisions. Yeah, so support them.
But I'd just like to ask the question. You know, you're talking about you know, healing from these traumas and that sort of thing. You know, you're both talking about that from different angles, and you're talking about a quantum jump. And so, you know, with the healing, so with all the parts coming back together again, something alchemic occurs. I just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. You know, what actually is that jump? What is the jump that you're talking about?
So, you know, when anything which is, suppose the soul is some seat of power, okay, we call it seat of power. And when it fragments, so some part of the power of the soul is removed from its existence, okay? It is subdued, or it's just suppressed, or it's just out. So now your power is reduced to from 100% to 90, 80, 70, 60, almost till 10, it can be anything. But as you rebuild the soul power again, and the mental, emotional factors that go along with it, so you energize the whole being to 100%. And you can imagine a battery, your phone battery of 100% or your phone battery of 10. With 100, you can be connected to the internet. With 10, it's difficult to even talk on the call, on the talk. So your whole potential just multiplies. It all depends on how the healing takes place in whatever manner. But no matter when, but when you're a complete person, when you're completely in sync, your mental, emotional, physical, and your soul energy, there is, it's completely in sync, and soul is all complete. I think there's no better place to be in. It's like the beryllium state, but the beryllium state is content with what it is. And this state is content with whatever is going to happen in the future. They don't care. The path is open to them, and they just go about doing whatever they need to do, and the world does not bother them because they're like 100% dynamo, charged energy, nothing comes their way.
I think having a career or a profession that's personally fulfilling is also important in this area. If people are in a job that is, sheer drudgery and they just do it to earn money to pay rent and etc., that's soul destroying. It's so, I always ask, what do you think your soul's mission is? Get people thinking about these sorts of things, and even talk about career options or changes of direction, which I can see are good for them, because you have to find a way.
What I did see is once people get back to more health or treated with what kind of treatment ever, but if that treatment leads to balance, they will change from job to purpose of life. They will just do it no matter what. We have a question. Do you find similarities between the Malvasia family and the luck remedies?
The which family?
Malvasia.
The Malvales, the Malvales.
Oh, Malvales, yeah.
The chocolate family, yeah. So,
well, chocolate sometimes does follow Lacumanum. I did a proving of Brachycheton rupestis in Australia a few years ago, which is our bottle tree, which is like a boab. It's Malvales. And it's more connected to the progression of Earth from Pangea back to unification. I think it's kind of that deep. It was very interesting during the proving over the 2 days. We worked over 2 days on triturations. We had about 20 people. And then the first day we went into the hall for morning tea, and they had 4 or 5 tables set, and we sat in little groups. But on the second day, we all sat in one big group. Every time we had a break, we sat in one big group, which was just amazing, really, that whole connectedness thing, which is part of what Malvales does. And I guess milks do connect on that level. If you're being fed the milk of your species, it helps you to connect to the flock that, you do belong to. So, chocolate's a remedy that I've only used a few times, but yeah, certainly there is a lack. It's probably more a sepia connection, I find. So it's often in the state of breastfeeding where women are very down that I've used that. So not so much with a lack, but more with lactation.
So coming to the same thing from the Malvales family, is from the plant family and belongs to the subclass Dilenidae for the homeopaths here. So that Dilenidae is all about mothering and nurturing, that subclass. And so, chocolate being earlier in the subclass is all about, I need to nurture and keep everything within me. But at the same time, if it's excessive nurturing, I need to get away. or this excessive nurturing is throttling me. It's like, suffocating me. I need to get away. Or I don't get enough of nurturing, both the states. So it's like that. So the mothering instinct is either there or it's completely absent. And so then you develop that connection, disconnection issues. And then, you just feel that either you are being too much of mothering or doing too much of mothering, or, or being like the spoiled parent or the spoiled child, or you're just very distant from them. And that affects you, so both the polarities. The plants do have a lot of polarities in them. So this is the disconnection. Again, the nurturing aspect leads you to the lack remedies. So again, it's the fourth subclass, and that subclass is all about nurturing, mothering, the natrum line of remedies, the natrum group of remedies, where natrum stands for connection to the mother-son infant relationship, which is either nurtured or against. So that's how you get the connection. And you'd have sepia as well at that state, because when you want to get away, you just want to get away, or you're at the state that I'm indifferent, I don't want anything of this any longer. It's too much. I just want to get away. See that.
So just coming back to what you were talking about before about the child and the parent and the adult, that I often find in women during lactation, if they have not been mothered well, if they were not nurtured at the breast, the wounded child in them speaks up, and that will speak up in pathologies such as mastitis or an abscess, which is anger at the mother. And it's always lac humanum is that. So that's where that connection comes. And you see that a lot. And this goes back to carcinosin too. If you're getting lots of mastitis that's coming and going and coming and going, carcinosin is a remedy that you would think of. And also too, if you're talking about mastitis, if it goes from one breast to the other and back again, like we say in lac caninum, and certainly in lac humanum, it's the same, it means that there's a streptococcal bacteria at the base of it. So I always give streptococcus 200 3 times a day for 3 days, along with the remedy, in order to deal with that bacteria, and then everything settles.
Interesting.
Left, right, left, right, left, right. But see, that's all about our DNA too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. We still have questions to answer here. One is to awaken oneself, do we require only an initiator, or do we need a guide of consciousness forever? Or a guru?
Sometimes a life event will do it. So that's an initiator of talk. So it's be a big trauma or an accident. Or, if you're driving along and the next thing you know, you hit a tree and you're a paraplegic. I mean, life is very different. And, maybe it's part of the program and takes you off in an area of growth that you hadn't anticipated earlier. And then the guide becomes, I guess, your higher self, because you have to dig deep in order to find a new way.
So the guide can only ignite and make a catalyst to the changes. But ultimately, you have to undergo those changes and become who you really want to be or what you need to be. Yeah. And very often it's just like a guru. So, we have a lot of gurus everywhere, and people are becoming gurus on the internet and getting degrees that you're a guru. But basically the word guru is very simple: dispeller of darkness. So anything which helps you to dispel darkness, suppose I read a book or I see a movie and I change my entire life, or I see a family, or I just meet a friend, and he's no guru to me, he's just a friend. But whatever he says, or I meet my doctor or homeopath, and it just changes my life. I don't even need to acknowledge that, but it happens. And it's just anything which will just change your life. Even a good meal at a restaurant or just a conversation with a stranger can do that.
Yeah.
So it's not, you have an initiator. Of course, that is a different path if you need it. Because again, it will tell you a group of remedies who want to be guided. rather than who can guide from within, or just accept things that flow as they are. So you get a clue to the remedy. Those who want to follow the guru and those who want to be a guru. you know.
Well, it's interesting. Like the lineage that I come from, they very much had teachers. So there was a line of teachers, and going back millennia. However, what I've found is that the teacher is within. And so, you're talking about the higher self, Patricia using that language. And what I've found is very much along the lines that you're talking about as well, is that whenever I need information, it's always available. Always. So the answer is actually always at hand. In terms of having a guide to your conscience or that type of concept, my sense and certainly my experience is that these guides are with us continuously as well. So we have our higher self, which is offering guidance to us, and then there's through the subtle connection, whether it be general consciousness or however you want to actually view these things, we've got access to that type of guidance always. That's always available to us. And I love the example that you're talking about with the broken china, and joining it up together with the gold and so on, because that's what we're doing. When we're working on ourselves and we're developing ourselves, is that we're taking the trauma, we've driven into the tree, and we're now a paraplegic, and we're going to glue ourselves back together again at the level of our being, the very deep parts of our being. And we're going forward, but that is a guru experience. That is a dispeller of darkness. That we've got a broken plate, or we've got a broken spine, and we need to actually bring ourselves back together and make something which is tremendously better than it was to begin with. Because the trauma was always waiting to occur. If we're talking about driving into the tree or dropping the plate, the injury to the plate or the spine already was there. It was already in existence. We just had to experience it. And then, but what do we do with that? What is it that we do with it? Yeah.
Actually, just this week it was announced, Neil, in the Queensland Australian of the Year participant is a doctor who, when he was a medical student, had an accident and became a paraplegic. And he finished his medical degree, and he's working in a hospital. He's in a wheelchair, and he has developed equipment to exercise the legs and the whole body, because it's his aim that he will walk again. So it's about retraining the nerves and the muscles. So he's gone off from his profession in a way that's going to benefit mankind. And he's fulfilled, he's fulfilled. He's married. He completed his degree. He's working as a doctor. Yet his life changed in an instant. So that's a good example of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you think of Clemens Kubi, who was in the wheelchair, healed himself and stood up and walks again. And now is telling people how to heal themselves. Yeah. And not confine themselves to ideas of being broken. Another question. If we can't introspect and confront ourselves to a state of awakening from within, then how can we evolve?
Well, I'll answer that one. You have to wake up. It's not possible to evolve without waking up. Oh. And so what does waking up mean? It means to actually be able to, examine and be present with yourself totally, and to be present and to examine and understand and become empathic with your environment totally as well. This is what waking up is about. So, I loved hearing both of you talking about, or the three of you really talking about your process of taking your, your patient, the introduction with the patient, and you're just being present. That's waking up. Being present is waking up. And the extent to which you can become present, so depending on the way you view these things, so for me, it's all of these minds, being able to be present in all of these minds is to be truly awake. and then evolution, spiritual evolution can occur. So that's how I would answer that question.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Next question. How can a dependent person, a person that depends on a weakness, ever awaken?
Somebody else go. I can answer it, but you guys go.
All right.
So,
I can, sorry, Patricia.
I was just going to qualify the word. They're dependent on what, Marianne?
On a weakness.
On a weakness. Well, I gave you the example with this young doctor. You know, becoming a paraplegic is a huge weakness and a blip in the path, but he turned it around. I mean, I went blind, and so I could see. It just depends on your perspective and what happens to you in life. Is how you go from that, because that was when I really got interested in medicine and self-help, was that process of going blind. So it changed my life. Now I'm in my 70s and I don't wear glasses. I've got one short vision eye and one long vision eye naturally.
So great. I nearly died when I was 35 and was animal doctor that time. I wasn't very spiritual, more materialistic. And after coming back from the other side, I realized there's so much more, and I dropped my homeopathic clinic, I dropped my animal clinic, and I went to see what is there and who am I really.
Yeah.
It was a long journey. But I got so interested in what is there, and I needed to explore.
What I could say is that we shouldn't go by the herd aspect of every 1 year has come to evolve. This is going to happen just naturally by the natural terms of the universe. So if we are here to learn certain lessons, we might just learn a simple lesson of politeness, or something like taking care of your elders or whatever. But in doing that, we evolve. But there is no significant criteria to measure how evolved you are. So if evolution is a natural process of life. You evolve to become a human. From an element, you become a human being. Isn't that evolution enough? And then from a human, you're becoming better and better and better and better, or worse and worse and worse, till you are not material any longer, you're spiritual. And that takes time. But the time is decided by us, but we are unaware of it. It was decided by us before we were born, and we know why we've come here, but we are unaware of it the moment we take birth. Yeah. And when we go back, we realize that these are some lessons. So evolution is just a term. Don't let the words trap you. Are you enjoying?
And everything is in perfection, isn't it? Even the dark and the light. People who are having what we would consider diabolical existences, they've got a part to play. There is no light without dark. There are no mountains without valleys. We have all sorts of people on this planet, and they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing. Of course, they get a chance to go back and perhaps redress that in another lifetime. I know in my last lifetime I wasn't such a good person, but I know what I need to do now. So, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So you have the shadow self of yourself, the shadow self, the so-called self, which you don't want to expose to the world. That I'm lying, I'm stealing money from companies, doing all internet stuff, hacking websites, but outside I'm a good doctor. I'm a very famous homeopathic doctor giving webinars, etc. So there's this shadow self of me, which I don't integrate with myself. If I keep them separate and say, okay, this is my good part, this is the bad part. I don't like the bad part because somebody taught me that because of my father or whatever, my brother or my best friend, I've become like that. But this is my
good part. You need
anacardium. So I need to get this and this together and say, this is me, good and bad, take it or leave it. I'm happy with this. I'm happy to lie. I'm happy to be good. And this is me. Take me. And if you can do that, I think that's a big step in evolution. Otherwise, we're all all to a great extent, all of us are bipolar. We have something for the outside world and something for ourselves. And ourselves and the outside world will never meet. But at least we can come closer. We can come closer. And face your vulnerabilities. Facing your vulnerabilities is the greatest strength. Once you face your vulnerability, you become very courageous. So that's what Brené Brown writes in a book. The vulnerabilities, like if I'm weak, okay, accept I am weak. Now, so what? Let somebody trample over me. Let me see how much they can trample over me. I'm weak. Okay. So once you accept that part of you, which is your weakest spot, you've already become courageous. Other than hiding. No, I don't tell anyone this because this is not a good part of me. It's a weak part of me. Don't let them know that I'm weak. I don't have a good voice. I have glasses. I don't have good eyesight. Don't let them see that. Don't let them see that. See, I have the glasses. I can see everything. I can see everything. So we always try to hide, but the once we try to express it, we have nothing to hide. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. If you have nothing to fear, we are the masters of fate, the universe. No matter what you are, what you're doing, and how much you're earning, it doesn't matter.
I mean, the fear is what drives the corticosteroid hormones in your body, which are the antagonists to oxytocin, which of course is the main driver for homeostasis. So, when you're happy and you're connected and feel that you're on your life's mission, you'll have lots of oxytocin in the system, and that keeps that fear down. You only get the corticosteroids when you need them, eustress rather than distress. I'm sure Roger Federer gets a bit of eustress every time he walks on a tennis court, even though he's going to win. But, that's what makes him perform, and I think that that's what underpins our psychotic miasm. You can't grow unless you've got a little bit of, adrenaline running through you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very, very glad to hear these opinions, and I can't quite remember the exact question because it's so interesting hearing to you. What was the exact question again?
Just one moment. It's on the mobile.
How do you turn your weakness?
How can a dependent person, a person that is dependent on a weakness, ever awaken?
Okay, well, look, I do have an opinion on this as well, and that is that the major attachments are to suffering, and so that like the main areas of our attachments, would things that we would be dependent upon, are suffering. It's all our suffering, and so the opportunities for awakening are, what you're talking about there earlier, to actually see your own so-called shortcomings. So, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a whatever. So we look at all of those things and identify them. We become present with them in the way that you're talking about. But to continue on a path, continue on a path to find yourself again, or however you want to describe this, you need to let go of the actual attachment to the suffering. So I'm not saying that the suffering goes, or the experience goes, but the attachment to that suffering, has to diminish. And then, of course, the other thing is, if you're actually seeing yourself as you are, the way you would describe yourself is by that suffering, then, you're dealing with an identification problem. So it's I am that suffering. So I am the depressed person. I am the traumatized person. And so you become, you're not only attached to the experience of the suffering, but you're attached to the idea that I am that thing. So both of those things would be areas that I would work with clients to try and help them to actually work past the notion that I am described by my suffering and that I actually can't exist without my suffering. So those
we call that a delusion in homeopathy, being attached to your delusion.
Sure are delusions.
Yes, very much so.
It's a state of mind that tricks you.
And still we invest a lot in keeping our delusions up.
Cool.
We do. That's the
Absolutely.
ego. Very, very attached. Absolutely.
We're a bit out of time already. Maybe you want to add some final words?
Well, I'd like to say to people, just be happy in what you do. Happy every day. You know, it gives you a sense of peace and purpose. And be kind to yourself.
Okay. So yes, that's apart taking from what Patricia has said. I believe you need a bit of passion in your life, a bit of compassion, and I'm sure you'll find your mission. So the passion, you need a little bit of desire. So, when the Buddhist monks really said that you to be without desire, desire is a cause of all suffering. So I realized that I couldn't be a Buddhist. But I realized that you need a little bit of desire. You need a little bit, like I desire to be a Buddhist. I desire to be God. I desire to be spirit. A little bit of desire is good. Maybe not desire for everything like what I have right now, but a little desire to get your passion stroked up. Passion and a compassion, understanding the world around you, your position in the world, and the interconnectedness between you and the world. And then I'm sure you'll reach your mission. So it's just play of words.
It's interesting, the Latin verb to love is amare, A-M-A-R-E. I don't know if you did any Latin at school, but when I'm talking to people about their path, and I'll bring that, I write it down, A-M-A-R-E, and I break it into 2 syllables, am and are. And we're talking about unconditional love or compassion, say, I am, you are. And that's where we need to be, is that just being and accepting and non-judging and making the room for each other's point of view. It's important. But I agree with you about the little bit of passion. I mean, this comes back to the psychotic miasm and this whole need for a little bit of adrenaline in your life just to light the fire under you. Yeah, otherwise, you won't go anywhere.
Well, my parting words would be to endeavour to become as coherent as you possibly can. So that's coherent internally, but equally to be coherent with your environment. So you're talking about loving these things, in the way that you're talking about, and the passion for it, the passion for that endeavour. But the end place, or the place that I would, recommend people to be trying to head towards, is a true state of coherence. Where they're fully coherent between all of the aspects of themselves, plus also with the environment, all the people around them.
Thank you very much. I like this live talk a lot. I hope we will meet again. And you 3 are talking very lively together. I really liked it.
Thank you.
I did too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just getting us all together is just one of the universe's many things which they do. And I don't know, we just gel together so well because we all are the same, ultimately the same view. Just be happy, enjoy your life, and make the best of it. Don't think about too many things. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Patricia, Neil, Mary Ann for inviting me.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.